This is a Parks Canada production. Ce balado est aussi disponible en français.
The human ear can detect sounds ranging from 20 hertz, very low pitch, to 20,000 hertz, very high pitch. Even higher frequency sounds are considered ultrasonic. If you could hear in the ultrasonic range and you went on a trip to Yoho National Park, set up your campsite and took a walk after dark, you just might hear something like this. That was a little brown bat, and it was echolocating, using sound waves to navigate at night and catch insects. Those ultrasonic sound waves were recorded on a special device, and the frequency lowered for our humble human ears. Echolocation is just one of the amazing things that bats do. Today's episode will reveal much more about the world's only true flying mammal. Welcome back to Connected, a Parks Canada podcast, and get ready to learn about little brown bats, a powdery white threat spreading across North America, and what Parks Canada is doing to prepare. To start the deep dive into little brown bats, I reached out to Anne Forshner, one of Parks Canada's wildlife ecologists.
So little brown bats or little brown myotis are just a small animal. They're covered in a little bit of fur. They have really beautiful wings, and they can eat almost their full weight in insects every night, which is quite remarkable.
The size of their body, would you say it's...
If I was holding one in my hand, it'd be like holding a roll of coins. You know, they're kind of long and skinny. Some of the small bats we have, they only weigh 6 grams.
So they are very small.
Yeah, but that's one of the interesting things. They're very small. And then you get up to a hoary bat, which is very, very big.
Yeah.
I just had no idea that these animals are out there in the night and that there's such a diversity of size and shapes and colors and personalities and calls and on and on and on.
Despite all this diversity, bats are facing a deadly common threat, and it's actually what pulled Anne into the world of bat research.
Little brown myotis or little brown bats was listed as endangered under the Species at Risk Act. And this is because they were facing large population declines along the east coast of Canada on account of an illness called white nose syndrome.
Can you explain how it affects bats, what sort of things we're seeing, how it spreads?
So white nose syndrome is caused by a fungus. It is not native to North America. We suspect that it came here from someone's clothing that was contaminated by fungal spores in Europe. The fungus spreads from bat to bat when they're hibernating. It appears like a fuzzy white, almost like a powder, on their nose, wings, and ears. And what it does, it kind of makes them uncomfortable when they're hibernating. So when they start moving around and they get agitated, they don't have any reserves and they can't get food outside because it's winter. So white nose syndrome still isn't actually here in Banff-Yoho Kootenay National Parks. So it gave us a little bit of a window.
Area closures and restrictions in the national parks protect ecologically sensitive areas, important habitats for species at risk, and locations where the potential for conflict between humans and wildlife is high. When visiting the national parks, research your route in advance, and if you come upon a closure, change your plans. Together, we can make space for wildlife where they need it most. Your actions matter. When you leave a national park, leave it wild. Learn more at parkscanada.ca/wildlife rules.
With the threat of white nose syndrome looming on the horizon, Parks Canada is doing what they can to prepare. A big focus is simply gathering information, or what Anne calls a baseline inventory.
What bat species we have, where they're found, where their important habitats are, and we're monitoring some of those places. Once we don't have bats in those places anymore, we know it's quite likely that white nose is here.
And what are some of those main monitoring sites?
Some of the sites we're working on right now are actually maternity roosts, and they are places where female bats gather to have their babies in the summertime. And some of these roosts for little brown myotis are found in buildings. We're trying to find one maternity roost per park that that we are monitoring over time.
Right.
Some of the places that we're finding them are actually in some of our older cook shelters that have a chimney that's made of like cinder blocks, and they are roosting between the old chimney and the wall. There's just about a 1-inch space that is perfect for them. What we suspect is that these structures are collecting heat in the day, and then they get a little bit of warmth from them.
So we don't have any natural cave sites in the parks.
We actually have one cave site, and we call those hibernacula, places where bats spend the winter, but we haven't found any others, although we're looking.
In addition to monitoring known bat locations, Anne is using other methods and tools to figure out which bat species are living in the park and where they spend their time. This usually means getting up close and personal with the bats.
You go out and you start looking for some sites to place a mist net, which is a really fine net that doesn't injure the bats, but they can't detect it, they can't see it. So they fly into this net that you set up, and then the hard work really starts getting them out of the net and then doing what you're going to do for the next part of the research.
Yeah.
All the work is, of course, done at night. You know, your work doesn't stop until probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So in our case, we put radio tags on little brown myotis because we were really interested in knowing where some of the important habitats for them are. We knew that we had bats in buildings, but we didn't know much about the natural environment. So the only way really to figure that out for us was to put a tag on. Normally, I will never handle wildlife unless it's absolutely needed for a research question. But in this instance, because white nose syndrome is emerging across the country, we do need to understand where some of these important habitats and residences are for them. Otherwise, how would we know where to start if we lose them?
And I think there's quite a bit of hope, actually. Like, I see so many examples of us having to respond reactively to threats to species at risk. And this seems like we might almost be ahead of the game, or we'll just be so much better prepared for when that big threat really hits the parks.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've done the best that we can. There are folks that are also studying treatments for the actual white nose that might be applied at maternity roosts. If we know where they are and the treatment becomes available, then we'll be positioned to look into applying that.
Shout out here to Corey Olson, an Alberta bat researcher who really helped Parks Canada figure out where to look for and find bats. And Emma Michelizzi, a graduate student from the University of Calgary who identified the location of a lot of maternity roosts in the parks. But collaboration doesn't stop there. For example, Anne works with different teams and individuals within Parks Canada.
I also work with law enforcement, of course, because it's illegal to harm or disturb bats for critical habitat. So we work quite closely to provide information so that people know how to manage bats in building, what to do if they see a bat, what some of the important ecosystem services bats provide are, like the fact that they eat so many insects. They're really important for forestry and agriculture because they are really good pest managers that are, not chemical. In addition to them just being a wonderful and unique part of our biodiversity.
Bats are truly remarkable insect-eating machines. They play a key role in the ecosystem and provide many benefits to us. But in turn, they could really use a helping hand.
Are there some specific actions, things that people can do to help conserve bats and help prevent the spread of white nose syndrome? What sort of advice would you have for the public?
There's a couple of things. Before people get to the national parks, if they're coming to visit, it's always a good idea to make sure that you do not have stowaways in your tents or camp trailers. Bats can stow away in really interesting locations, for example, in umbrellas. And if someone just were to grab that umbrella, put it in their car and move on, all of a sudden they'd have moved a bat from one place to another. So we'd like to avoid that if possible, because again, we don't want to add to this potential spread of infected bats.
Yeah.
And then I think educating and informing ourselves on how we can safely coexist with bats is a really important one. In Alberta and British Columbia, there's 2 organizations, the Alberta Community Bat Program and the BC Community Bat Program. Those are great organizations to look up on the internet to see if there's ways that people can contribute.
I'm looking at the homepage of the BC Community Bat Program's website right now and can confirm that there are a ton of great resources, like what to do if you find bats in your home, how to build a bat box, and ways to get involved. So check out those different resources next time you're online. Learn something new and share your favorite bat facts with a friend.
Go behind the scenes and visit an active conservation project this summer. Parks Canada is offering guided hikes to the West Slope Cutthroat Trout Reintroduction Project in Banff National Park. This family-friendly guided hike travels through mature forests and into a basin filled with high peaks, wildflowers, and larch trees. Discover how these small pieces make up the grand mosaic of this stunning landscape. Visit parkscanada.ca/yoho-conservation-hikes to reserve your spot.